Hey Marina, thanks for
Hey.
joining me today. I'm so excited to chat about your experience with your vitality activation session.
I'm really
So,
excited too.
yeah, it seemed like it shifted a lot for you. So, I'd love to just dive in. And I'd love if you could share kind of what you were experiencing, how you were feeling before our session together, like what was making it feel like this would be really helpful for you, and how did that shift afterwards?
Yes. Okay. For me, so our whole vitality session was about around boundaries for me. Obviously, in the space that I work in, boundaries are really important in relationships. And there's something that I know a lot about mentally, but I feel like there's a difference between like knowing and then knowing and like really like feeling into things. So I've known for a while that I had a deep guilt with holding boundaries for not really just boundaries in general, but for people that I was really close with. So like partners, like romantic relationships, really close family, people I loved. So sometimes for me, I had done a lot of work because this has been an issue for me for a really, really long time, which is why I'm glad that we got to do the session. But before, I had done a lot of mental work on it, reading books, like learning things about boundaries, learning things about false beliefs and things like that. And then over the years, I had gotten a lot of progress from that. Then I had discovered like listening to your intuition and tapping into your body and asking your body what it wants and like what is coming up around these feelings and things like that. Obviously, there was like a bigger progress with that, even. But there was still a wall I was hitting with that, doing it on my own. So I had gotten from tapping into my body that, okay, I have the feeling that I'm getting is guilt. And over time, like I had gotten that I feel, so on a subconscious level, that when I have boundaries, the people I love would feel like I was abandoning them or I would be abandoned by the people that I loved. So I knew this, but my logical brain would try to tell me, okay, this makes sense. Maybe I felt abandoned as a child. And so, like, I don't want my partners to feel abandoned that way. And so I'm kind of like, maybe I'm overcompensating. Like, basically, I was just getting stuck up in my head again because I think when you're doing really any work like that, but when you're doing intuition work and then you're trying to not like you're trying to do it yourself, you're trying to not think, there's like a lot going on. And sometimes I think it's harder to like shut your logical brain out. So anyways, like in the meantime too, I won't get like too into it, but for years I've also been getting which makes sense after we worked together. But I've also been getting like messages from my mom because I'm a medium to like let go of guilt. And I'm like, yeah, okay, like cool. And whenever I'm around my medium friends, they're like, oh, like your mom. My mom was a medium, so she's like really strong in that too. She's like, your mom has a message for you. Is it let go of guilt? Yes, I understand. I know. So anyways, I think that when I came to you about boundaries, it wasn't to understand as much. I think I needed to like deeply feel it so that because I was in a pattern of like holding boundaries, but then it like making me feel anxious inside and like the feelings were still there even though I was going through the motions. So like for me, it's that deeper level of really being able to like let go of it and not be holding on to that because that's not fun. You don't want to be like having that feeling. You want to be able to fully sit in your divine feminine energy, and I think to do that you have to honor your emotions and be able to let go of them. So when we worked together, it was funny because I remember, like, I think the first thing that had come up was a memory. Because when you're doing like the intuition stuff for people are probably watching this because they don't know what the sessions are like, but a lot of things can come up, like images, like colors, feelings, things like that, which is why I think it's important to, and it was really helpful for me to work with you being a professional, because you were able to, I was really able to let go and not analyze those feelings and emotions that were coming up so much, because that's the pattern that I would get stuck in. It's hard to do, right? If something's coming up, it's hard to just like let it flow through. So by the beginning of our session, like memories of my mom and stuff were coming up. And then I would get in my head and I was like, okay, this has nothing to do with boundaries. Like, why is this coming up? And I let the process kind of go through. And by the end of my session, um, it was like Lorna had guided me through my intuition, telling me that I was afraid to have boundaries because I had to have boundaries with my mom her whole life. And she my intuition was telling me that my mom had killed herself because I had boundaries and that was my fault. And I think that once that got brought up to my subconscious, I was able to see how ridiculous that was, but also honor my feelings on that and be compassionate towards, oh, this makes a lot of sense of why I've been feeling this immense guilt. So now I can be compassionate about that and let that go and like move forward. But also I can see this is a false belief. Like this isn't something that's true. But it really connected because I had thought back on the night she passed away. She had texted me. I had boundaries. So I didn't text her back. I was going to text her back the next day. I had a chance to see her a couple days before and I didn't. Um, and so, you know, even when I had gone back after that, not long after my mom died, I had gotten into an abusive relationship and I was terrified to leave him because I thought he might kill himself. And so after all this, like everything, I feel like a lot of things connected and it made a lot of sense to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I've been holding this whole time. And and that this old story has been keeping me in toxic patterns. Not the same ones as close to my mom's death. Like it's not like I've been in you know, emotionally or like abusive relationships in the present, but even things that like little things that people didn't even really care about that had to do with me holding boundaries would give me extreme anxiety, guilt, and I never knew why. So for me, it was really helpful to have that conversation with my intuition guided because I think it's a lot easier to do that, I would say, when you have help and a supportive space to do that. Because for me, like I was saying, I'm not someone that's coming from a space of like, I don't know what the fuck boundaries are, or I don't know that like I know I'm very aware that boundaries are healthy and good and I'm worthy of having boundaries and all these things. But I think sometimes, especially when you have something as deep as that, like boundaries ran really deep for me. I think when you have something that is like a core, deep subconscious belief, you're not always going to be able to like uncover that yourself, just doing everything on your own. And I tend to like to do a lot of things on my own. So that's why I was really happy to do this testimonial because I think that when you can I think the goal for me was to deeply feel like I was worthy of holding these boundaries and understand on a deeper level why I was feeling this way that I knew was kind of like out of alignment with me. So, anyways, yeah, it was really, really, really helpful to have a supportive space to do that and have someone like Lorna, walk me through all that.
Yeah. Ooh, that's so juicy. That's like it sounds like it was really clarifying. I know we keep using the word deep, but it seems like if you're trying to solve this problem like logically up here in your thinking mind, like it doesn't sounds like you were trying to do that and it wasn't quite getting you to the answer and then dropping down into like your body awareness and like having that conversation with your intuition. It sounds like that unlocked something for you. Does that feel true?
Yeah, I think even like me dropping into my body myself unlocked a lot more because this like remember this has been like an issue for like a long time. That unlocked even more, but still there was like I think sometimes that's why there's not everyone just does everything on their own, Like I think that like it unlocked everything, like all of the rest, and it was like a huge opening to be able to tap into my body, but like with somebody else, because I think that it allows you to, or it allowed me to kind of let go and accept what was coming up. Because I think sometimes your mind, too, if things are coming up that you're like, right, like I was saying in the beginning, I was always very dismissive. If something of my mom's comes up, oh, maybe I'm not doing the intuition thing right. This has nothing to do with boundaries. Okay, like immediately pushing it down and suppressing it. So yeah, that for me was really helpful to just be able to be like, because I know everything, right? So just to be able to be like, okay, like I'm just gonna let Lorna knows what she's doing with this. She does this every day. I'm just gonna let her walk me through it. And I'm gonna like not turn off my mind. And I think that was like really, really, really helpful to be able to just like shut off for a second and like really listen.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. So, yeah, so thanks for sharing all that. And I know we're kind of like talking around what the session is. So, if you had to describe to someone like what the process was like, or, how did it feel? Like, literally, like, what were we doing in the process? How would you say that in your own words?
Okay, so I would say it's I know I keep saying listening. I'm trying to think of how I would describe this to someone that doesn't know. If you're somebody that has like a base understanding of what it's like to tap into your own body. So a lot of times that can even be new for people because you're used to hearing like your mental thoughts. And then a lot of times when you just kind of drop down into like your heart space, you can get like thoughts, deep feelings on something, colors, sensations, whatever it may be, but it's almost like a knowing. Like it's like you know that that's true for you. Where sometimes if you're thinking about something, it's like a question mark still. Where it's like, oh, I think this is this, but I'm not sure. And I feel like when you are able to like drop down into your body, it's like, oh, I know this is true. You're not really analyzing things as much. I really think it's just deeply listening to your own self and like what is true for you. But I think that the sessions go a little bit further than that because sometimes it's almost like having, I would say, like two frequencies or like two voices that you're listening to or that you're able to hear. And for me, it was a lot different the experience of like me tapping into my own body versus being guided through that with someone. And I would say I'm very used to tapping into my intuition and having a connection with my spirituality and all those things. But still, I think it just allows you to. I think when you're doing that on your own, especially if you're like taking notes, sometimes it takes you out of it. And so I think, or not that it takes you out of it. I just think that like you can go so much deeper when you're being guided by somebody, because you're really able to let go. I wasn't concerned about missing information or, oh, well, like I can't fully shut down my mind because, like, what if I get something and then I forget it by the time I'm done, like meditating or something? I knew that it's like I was really, really able to like deeply let go and go into that. Um, and really it's I know it kind of sounds like this like big thing, but really it's just you're just sitting there and you know, you were asking me questions, asking my intuition questions like, are you there? What are you feeling? And sometimes my answers weren't full answers. You know, it's not like your logical brain thinking. Sometimes they were memories that came up, or I feel guilty, I feel this. And then just trusting that you were going to guide me through that and not tell me, you know, I appreciate that there wasn't any like direction. So it wasn't like, oh, like, well, you feel this way. Maybe that means this or whatever. It's literally just like, why do you feel that way? Why is this? Why is that? And going deeper, deeper, deeper into it. So, yeah, the process is really interesting. I would say that it's something that is something that I think people would have to experience to really get. Because I think sometimes when you're talking about it, it's like, you're listening to your intuition. It's like I could see how it's like, but yeah, for me, it we've done a couple of these too. Like there's been another thing that we've done on these, and both times really big shifts. So I would highly recommend anyone that is. I know that your space is more like the physical, but even emotional things, limiting beliefs. I think that it's really helpful.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. Um, yeah, and that's so true too. At least like that's what I see over and over and over again is that it's all connected. So even if um, you're experiencing something like chronic illness symptoms and it doesn't make logical sense that there would be anything emotional connected, I would be surprised if there wasn't something just because I see the connections in people all the time. Like there's always something that comes up. And vice versa. Like if there's something, it feels like there's a really heavy emotional weight, or like you said, limiting beliefs that are keeping you in patterns you don't really like. Clearing all that up often shifts how you feel physically too. I've had people like say they're having more energy and things like that. So, yeah, it's really interesting to do these sessions and see that it affects the holistic being, like whoever is receiving this, like, yeah, like there's a shift across like all areas of life in many ways. So yeah, so that's super cool to hear. And yeah, so it sounds like for you, the process was basically like shifting where your awareness is, and like you were able to kind of stay, like keep your awareness um, in the space of like receiving messages from your intuition and your body rather than listening, going up to the mind, listening, going up, like, oh, am I going
I'm
to
very
forget it? I have to write it
stubborn.
down.
Yeah, well, another thing too is I'm really stubborn. So I like to be like, I already had a thought of what my boundaries were attached to. So it was like that for me. I was like, yeah, I felt abandoned as a child. I don't want to abandon people. And maybe it's like this other thing over here. And so I had these things, and I was like being very stubborn in that, where it's like, okay, like, what is the deeper part of that? Like, I was already going down, like, I don't want to say the wrong path, but I had something in my head fixed. So I think that was helpful too, to be able to let go of the attachment to that idea and be open to whatever was coming in. And when I did, a lot of things clicked in my life where it's like, oh, okay, these messages from my mom make sense. This makes sense. Like, all these other things are starting to fall into place now. So I think that Yeah, it's definitely helpful, I think, if you're someone that is like um controlling or like gets stuck up in your head a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah, and we all do it from time to time, so no shame there. Um, and yeah, I'd love to hear too, if you noticed any shifts, in the days after our session. Could be emotional, could be within your body, or like you said, like patterns in your life. Yeah, like what kind of benefits did you see after?
Yeah, I think I definitely noticed a lot of like I would say feelings of like happiness or something from I was able to kind of go back and be like, oh, a lot of these things make sense. And I think I was able to do a little bit more shadow work because I knew what I had to be compassionate about. Like for me, a lot of shadow work is like honoring your feelings. It's like honoring both sides, like honoring your feelings, but then also noticing, like, oh, okay, but this isn't true for me anymore or something. So I feel like I was able to do a lot of that. But also, I noticed like I had been put in a few positions where I had to, honor my boundaries. And I feel like I was able to do so without feeling bad about it, which has been something that's been, you know, really hard for me in the past. So I had to do a lot of work around even having boundaries. And then even after that, I was able to have boundaries, but it was still really hard for me. And I think like I didn't notice how taxing it was on my body because now I'm having to, and that's really why I wanted to do the session too, because I was noticing, like going through the motions, but still feeling, guilty and sad and upset about it and having to process that later. And that's a process. And then also, um, feeling like I feel like when you go about things that way, you're kind of in the energy of like enforcing boundaries. Like now I have like a shield of my boundaries to protect myself instead of just knowing that I can just honor my boundaries and I don't really have to be on the defense about it. And and it's okay to have those and stuff. So I think that the big shift for me was having boundaries and then not really giving a fuck about it and being kind of like, well, like this is and that but that was really big for me. And I know that you're talking about physical stuff too. And so I think that it wasn't my intention to have it help in any other way, but I think that it did free up a lot of like energy for me because now I'm not holding this like, I know I have to have my boundaries because that's the right thing to do, but it's out of alignment for me because a part of me subconsciously feels like I shouldn't have boundaries and I'm not allowed to have them. And there's conflict within your body. And so I think that was the hard part for me is like, I'm deeply feeling one thing and like I know that, I know another thing. So it was able to help kind of like balance that energy, I think, out a little bit.
Mm, I love the way you put that, like having conflict in your body, like almost as a result of like this resistance, like emotional or like belief resistance within yourself. Like, and I've seen that too. Like, it takes a lot of energy to be in resistance and to, yeah, to like be out of alignment with yourself. And so it feels like maybe for you, this session was about releasing a lot of resistance and freeing up your natural like energy reserves. Does that feel true?
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing that I wanted to share, being someone who's like very controlling and like, well, I know everything and like I'll just work on things myself and like I'll do stuff myself. Is sometimes I think that you can only go so far when you have like a deep subconscious limiting belief because no matter what you know to be true, And even what you are worth, like I knew all of these things. I knew that I'm worthy of having boundaries. I knew that I didn't have a reason to feel bad about all these things. But I also knew, like in my intuition, that I had this deep feeling that having boundaries was bad, or like I felt guilty for them, and like there's that struggle. But because of that, there's conflict now within my body where it's like I'm going one way and then another way.
Mm,
And so I think that that was really helpful to just figure out where that was finally, and then kind of bring that to the surface so then we can, align it and get rid of it, kind of move past it for good.
yeah. Yeah, like coming into like the fullest expression of yourself, like the more like the next layer of like your healed self. That's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there's not like it's so hard when you have like really deep limiting beliefs. So I think that it's like there's no I think that yeah, there's no like you should always be able to like work with someone on things that are like difficult for you to reach into yourself, it's not like a bad thing if you can't you're not supposed to always do everything on your own. So I think that was really helpful too, is just to um really like, and sometimes like everybody has stages of things, but I think that like that's why I really like these sessions, because I think they allow you to go really deep without being super invasive. Because I feel like I've seen like some other methods that are like you want to make sure you're like ready for things like there's some other like emotional release stuff that I feel like is kind of like heavy. So I really like this because I feel like it's like I would say the gentlest approach with the most impact that I've seen, because I don't think that it was yeah. So anyways, I really enjoyed our session. I think it was beneficial for me too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I always love to hear about people's experiences because it's always a little unique for each person. But I love the way you put that, that it's like it's really gentle, but also like high impact or like deep impact. So that's awesome. So yeah, as we wrap up here, I'd love to hear just if there's anybody watching that is maybe on the fence about it or has never done an experience like this before. Is there anything you'd want to share with them?
Um, I would say if someone's on the fence to definitely just take the leap, because I've been in I think we've done a couple of sessions like this before and it's been really helpful, and I've had a lot of help just going into my own intuition. Doing I think intuition work in general is like really powerful. But I think that when you have something that it's always helpful to work with someone and to have a guide, and just do that when you're working on your own stuff, especially. Um, and I think that sometimes if people aren't like, I forget too that I'm more connected to my spirituality, but I think that like sometimes it's hard for you to listen to your own intuition if you're like it's weird, like you're like, oh, this is weird. Like I'm having a conversation with my intuition. So I think it allows you to kind of like get out of your head a little bit and just allow the experience to happen. But I would say, I mean, I don't see any reason why I would not do something like this. In the past, there's been things like, I've been nervous in the past to do like, some emotional release techniques, because I know like, oh my God, like what's gonna happen? Like I know it'll be good after, but am I gonna like my emotional release going to be like a panic attack, or am I just going to start crying? Because I've seen people like go through those things. And I don't want to say like, obviously we're not medical professionals, so everybody has their own experiences with whatever things. But I do think that this is a good way to start that conversation with your intuition. And I think when you have it, when you go through it guided, you end up with more tools to work on your own later for like other little things too, which I think is helpful. If there's somebody that like they've like never done anything like this before, that's helpful too because now you're working with somebody, you're getting like your big thing worked out professionally, and then it's like you have the tools that you need to like take that with you and into your daily life and like do things, and then you can, come back and work with people, again. So yeah, I would say if someone's on the fence, definitely just to tap into your intuition and see what your what your intuition says.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I want it to be like a full body yes for for anybody
Yeah.
who's like, I don't know." Like, if it's a no, that's totally cool too. Um, and actually, I want to ask you one final thing, which is just, I I love that you're referencing like other emotional release techniques. So for you, I'm so curious, like, what did it feel like emotionally or in your body to be that deeply connected with your intuition for basically an hour? How did that really feel?
Yeah, I feel like and actually before that too, I like what you said about like a full body yes. Like I think sometimes when people are like, "Oh, it's not a full body yes." I think sometimes your fear can get, and that's why like tapping into your intuition, it's like it could be a full body yes and your mind is like, "Oh, I don't know, like I'm afraid, blah blah blah." But you could feel like when something's you can feel it. But anyways, yeah, so when we were going through it, I definitely had emotions coming, especially when it was like when obviously this has been something that's like really been really deep for me for a long time. So when stuff with my mom was coming up, I was crying at some points because I was just like, "Oh my god, like this makes so much sense." But I feel like it never for me, it never felt too intense because I've definitely been through I've done like other techniques and stuff in the past. Not for this same issue, but for other things. And I've definitely had things that I've been like, oh my God, like I wish I knew that this was gonna, or like maybe I did know, but I was like, oh, like I'm a badass, like I'll just do it. But like it's been really intense where I've had to take like a few days after, or like, I'm like, it's like a lot. You're releasing a lot. But I would say that I think it cleared a lot. But me, as far as me like releasing things, I didn't feel like, I mean, I just like went about my day after. I took like a little bit of time to kind of like honor what I was feeling and like let myself cry. But then I was like, I was okay. It wasn't like, oh my God, like this like took everything out of me or something. But it did. But I noticed shifts right away because I was like, now I'm like aware of it. So I think that is what was really helpful for me is like really soon after that, I was in a position to, in a few positions to and I didn't feel like I was consciously like, oh, we just had this session on boundaries and now I know this and so I'm enforcing it. I felt like it was just a natural feeling of like this doesn't align with where I'm going right now. So like I'm going to have a boundary about this and I'm not going to feel bad about it. And that's really what I wanted. And like what I wanted to achieve was not more mental proof that it's okay to have boundaries. It was a feeling of it just being effortless, where it's like, this isn't aligned with what I need right now. So that's okay, and everyone's gonna be okay. No one's gonna abandon me. They're not gonna feel like I'm abandoning them. They're still gonna love me. They're not gonna cry about it. And we're gonna move on. And like, and that's it. So I think that was really helpful.
Mm, awesome. Yeah. I'm so glad this was so helpful for you. It's always cool to hear like the really deep shift afterwards. So thanks so much for sharing. And yeah, yeah, thanks for sharing about your experience. And I think I'll close this here. But that was a it was beautiful to do a session with you, and I'm so glad it shifted some things. So thanks, Marina.
Yay. No, thank you for doing this with me. I'm really excited. And I'm really excited that we got to talk about it too, because yeah, it did shift a lot. And so I think it's important for people like who, I mean, for me, it was like limiting beliefs and emotional shifts, but it did shift a lot of stuff physically that I didn't really intend to either. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.